Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Conn-Williamson, and I'm with the ACLU of Ohio. Before we begin, we'd like you to know that we do have closed captioning available. Just click the closed captioning button below. Welcome to our webinar, The Landscape of Reproductive Rights in Ohio. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful day and honoring us with your presence. And for those who were able to secure a lunch voucher, we hope you enjoy your lunch. It's been a really busy week for repro rights in Ohio, and we're glad you're here to hear all about it and then some. The purpose of today's webinar is to get a comprehensive look at what your reproductive rights and the reproductive rights of all Ohioans look like across the state. We are joined by our four wonderful panelists today. First, we'll talk to Jamie Miracle, Deputy Director of NARAL Pro-Choice Ohio, who will help us look at legislation and policies that have come and are coming from the State House. Then, our cooperating attorney and Case Western School of Law Associate Dean for Research and Faculty Development, Jesse Hill, will update us on what organizations such as the ACLU of Ohio and our frequent litigation partners, Preterm, Planned Parenthood, and many others have going on in the courts. Relational organizer from Ohio Women's Alliance, Alana Garrett-Ferguson, will then discuss the impact of the repression of reproductive freedom in Ohio on marginalized communities such as Black, Brown, and poor communities. And then last but not least, we'll talk to Catholics for Choice Domestic Program States Manager, Gabby Garcia Vera, about the often undermined religious faith communities who work for reproductive freedom in this state and across the nation. So Jamie, let's begin with you. This past lame duck session in the fall and winter, we saw a complete takeover so lawmakers could push their anti-choice agenda. This resulted in two new laws, one being the fetal tissue disposal bill and the other being a ban on telemedicine abortion. However, as we saw yesterday, that wasn't enough because we saw a trigger bill being introduced. Can you tell us what should we expect now with what appears to be an action plan of cutting abortion and reproductive access from different angles?
Thanks, Sarah. Definitely. I think that, putting some context on the whole conversation first. Since 2011, first Governor Kasich and now Governor DeWine have signed 25 different anti-abortion, anti-reproductive health provisions into law. These range from $7.5 million allocated to fake health centers with anti-abortion agendas, banning abortion based on why the person was seeking care, banning abortion at various points in pregnancy, defunding Planned Parenthood and other family planning programs, not once, but twice, and so many other attacks. Sometimes you start thinking like, when will they run out of ideas? And unfortunately, that doesn't seem like something that will happen anytime soon. And also just for access context, since 2011, we've gone from 16 full service abortion clinics in our state to 9, 6 of which are still full service that provide inpatient procedural abortion care. The other 3 providing just medication abortion services. Toledo, Dayton, and Cincinnati are all operating with 1 clinic, and Toledo is the only city that a clinic exists in where they don't have procedural in-clinic abortion care accessible. So we've seen a huge increase in the number of attacks legislatively and a large decrease in the number of clinics in our state. So like you said, in the lame duck session, we saw 2 more bills passed. We're going to hear about one, I think a little bit more from Jesse because the lawsuit was just filed on Senate Bill 27, which requires facilities who perform in-clinic abortion care to deal with fetal tissue through burial or cremation only. It cannot be handled as other biological tissue is handled in medical situations. It was supposed to go into effect in early April, but hopefully this lawsuit that was filed that Jesse will talk more about will block that from happening. And then Senate Bill 260 banned the use of telemedicine for medication abortion care. So they kind of attacked it from both sides, making it harder for clinics to offer in-clinic care, and also making it harder for people to access, especially in rural areas of our state, medication abortion care through telemedicine. So that's kind of like where we've been and kind of how the end of last year started. And this year, we'll kind of wait and see. The budget just started really getting into the groove. And you might ask, well, what does the state budget mean for abortion? In fact, historically, a lot of anti-abortion legislation has been snuck into the state budget. Once again, kind of really showing that anti-abortion legislators in Ohio know that they don't have the majority behind them. Sneaking things through in lame duck. An interesting fun fact, I did the math for a presentation that we did for lame duck last year. Lame duck is 9% of the legislative session, but 40% of anti-abortion bills have been passed during that short section of time. Another big chunk has been passed sneaking things through at the last minute through the state budget. So the Parenthood defunding, the Crisis Pregnancy Center funding, some restrictions on how ambulatory surgical facilities that provide abortion care operate have all passed historically through the state budget. So we'll be watching that process really carefully to see if there is more funding for crisis pregnancy centers or fake women's health centers and anything else that they decide to sneak through in the state budget. And then just because they wanted to make sure that I had something to talk to y'all about today, they introduced Senate Bill 123 in the Ohio Senate on Tuesday. We call bills like this bill an abortion trigger ban because it bans all abortion in the state of Ohio without exceptions for life or health of the individual who is pregnant. But this law will not go into effect like all the other bills 90 days after it's signed by the governor. This will just sit quietly in Ohio Revised Code until conditions arise that allow states to ban abortion more fully and completely, like this bill allows for. So either the US Supreme Court overturning or gutting Roe or deciding another case in a way that would allow states to ban abortion more fully, or a US constitutional amendment that allows states to ban abortion. So it's interesting. A lot of people are like, well, why do you pass something like that? And I think the timing is super interesting for the introduction of this one in Ohio right now, because 2021 is the year that we redraw all of our legislative districts. So the districts we have now and the representatives that are in those are highly gerrymandered. They're ridiculous. My state senator lives in another county completely, and I live in the middle of a city. The district that's right next to mine is literally a block from my house. And so the fact that I am not with my neighborhood in my legislative districts is just completely outrageous. So we're going to redraw those districts. And because of ballot initiatives and various legislative actions, we're going to draw those different districts differently this time, which should result, hopefully will result, in more fair districts. And so groups like A High Right to Life know that they only have their gerrymandered supermajority for one more year before we elect people in 2022, hopefully in more fair districts. So this is almost like stacking the deck and putting this piece in code while they still have their supermajority before our voices are actually heard more in the state legislature with more fair districts. One of the groups that does really excellent work, if you want to learn more about gerrymandering and the redistricting process, is our partner at All on the Line Ohio, and you should definitely check them out and learn more about that. So what else are we expecting to see? Like I said, they never run out of new ways to attack access to abortion care. What we saw, one of the things we saw last year was a tax credit for people who donate, a state tax credit for people who donate to crisis pregnancy centers or these fake women's health centers. So the $7.5 million in direct donations to these organizations isn't enough. They want to give people a direct state tax credit in the amount of like 50% of the amount that you donate to these centers off of your state tax burden. So we expect to see that again. We've seen a co-sponsor memo go out. We expect that to be introduced pretty much any day now. And anti-abortion groups have been really super on another issue they call abortion reversal. It's a completely medically inaccurate term. It doesn't exist. And it's basically forcing medical professionals who provide medication abortion care to provide misinformation and potentially dangerous information to patients. There's absolutely no evidence that giving a high dose of progesterone after taking the first pill of a medication abortion regimen will actually safely stop the actions of that first medication. A research study was actually done in the last year to see if it was safe to do something like that. And the research was actually halted because of safety concerns for participants. So the state of Ohio, by pushing bills like this, is forcing doctors to give potentially unsafe and completely medically inaccurate and unproven information to their patients. Last session, we also saw a total ban, which basically created a crime of abortion murder and would charge doctors and other folks with murder if they performed abortion care. So unlike the trigger ban, this would immediately go into effect in the state of Ohio. And really, who knows what else? North Dakota this year just finished their legislative session as we're just getting going in ours. And they considered a bill that said that abortion clinics couldn't be placed within 30 miles of a school. So like I said, they never seem to cease to amaze on the kinds of proposals that they come forward with. But it's also not all bad news. We're working with a series of legislators and our coalition members, like the folks on the call today, to introduce some proactive bills around reproductive health. And some legislators have already introduced bills that we're most definitely supporting, including House Bill 42 by Erica Crowley from the Columbus area, called the Save Our Mothers Act, which enacts provisions to ensure more racial equity, especially in maternity care, because the racial inequities in healthcare, especially around birth, are so great between Black moms and white moms. And then Senate Concurrent Resolution 2 is a crossover, it's a carryover from last year also, that would declare racism a public health crisis and put a whole host of things in place to start to chip away at all of the systematic inequities in our governmental systems and our healthcare systems, to start really looking at those inequities in health and other structures in our government. So stay tuned for more positive news on bills that we're introducing, but that's kind of the overview of where we are right now.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm glad you highlighted the positive bills, because we do need to have something to look forward to. But I did want to say the ACLU of Ohio's policy director, Jocelyn, she has a very apt description. She's probably watching. When she speaks about law after law being introduced and passed in Ohio, she says, if anti-choicers can't ban abortion outright, they will pass law after law after law to give it a death by 1,000 cuts. And that's exactly what's going on here in this state and across the nation. So now these laws, they keep passing, and oftentimes providers and organizations, along with the ACLU of Ohio, are often the first ones to say, see you in court. In fact, we just sued over the fetal tissue bill just 2 days ago. We've got plenty of lawsuits going on in the courts. So Jessie, can you give us a brief outline of these cases?
Absolutely, I'd be very happy to. So I work with the ACLU of Ohio as a cooperating attorney on all of these cases, actually. And so I'm just going to give you all the quick rundown of what is currently going on in the courts regarding Ohio litigation. There are currently five active cases that the ACLU of Ohio is involved in, and that are currently pending in Ohio, that are constitutional challenges to abortion restrictions. And I don't know if for most people, if 5 sounds like a lot or a little, but it's a lot. It's a lot to have 5 blatantly unconstitutional laws that we're challenging all at once. So much thanks to the ACLU for just their commitment to this issue too. So I'm going to go through them. The first, in no particular order, honestly, but a lot of these laws are from they go back as far as like 2015, but so they're all pretty recent restrictions, that we're speaking about. First one is a ban on abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, the so-called heartbeat bill, which bans abortion when you can detect fetal cardiac activity, generally around 6 weeks of pregnancy, before most people even actually know they're pregnant, because the way pregnancy is measured, it's actually from your last menstrual period, which occurs before even fertilization actually occurs, which means you're really at 6 weeks of pregnancy, you've really only been pregnant for about 4 weeks. You may not have even realized you've missed, your period yet. So this is close to an all-out abortion ban. Not exactly an all-out abortion ban, but pretty close. So that law was passed, I believe, 2019. We went to court, challenged it immediately, got it blocked immediately. So that law has never gone into effect in Ohio, although unfortunately some folks don't realize that. The word has not gotten out as well as we would have liked, but that law is blocked. It's never gone into effect. We have asked the court to simply rule on the case without requiring a trial or any evidence because it's so straightforward and so blatantly unconstitutional. We asked for that about 1.5 years ago, and we are still waiting for the judge to rule on that motion. Just recently, he decided to kind of keep the case on hold while some other cases are playing out in the appeals court level here in Ohio to see what happens with those. But as long as the law is not in effect, we're basically happy. Another law that we have challenged, and again, we challenge these on behalf of Preterm, which is a wonderful nonprofit abortion clinic in Cleveland, but also we work together and sometimes jointly represent other clinics in the state as well. Is end of 2017, a law was passed banning abortion on behalf or when any part of the patient's reason for the abortion relates to a diagnosis of fetal Down syndrome. So basically telling people what are appropriate reasons or not appropriate reasons, or at least with respect to this one reason, right, for choosing not to continue a pregnancy. This is, again, just so straightforwardly unconstitutional law. We got it immediately blocked before it went into effect. And then it went up on appeal, and the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Federal Appeals Court, agreed that it was unconstitutional. And then unfortunately, the state decided to seek a somewhat unusual procedure where they ask for instead of just a panel of judges, which usually decides appeals, they asked for the entire Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, 16 judges, to sit and rehear the case. Like I said, it's a somewhat unusual procedure. They usually only do this in very important cases. The Sixth Circuit agreed to do so in that case. Now, the reason for that move is probably because the Sixth Circuit has become an extremely conservative court. There are, I believe, 5 Trump appointees on that court who are very, very far to the right ideologically. So I just realized as I was preparing for today that I argued that case in front of that Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals 1 year ago today. This is the 1-year anniversary. Interestingly, also anniversary of the start of the pandemic, I guess. It was a very crowded courtroom, in-person argument in Cincinnati. So that's a very interesting memory. But the appeals court has not decided that case yet. So we're waiting for the outcome in that case. Another law that we are involved in challenging is a ban on a particular method of abortion called D&E that is used only after about 13, 14 weeks of pregnancy, but it's a second trimester, but it is the most common second trimester method of abortion. And it is pretty much the only method of abortion that's used in clinics after the first trimester generally. So, so this law banning that method, it essentially functions like a ban on abortion after about 14 weeks of pregnancy or so. Again, went to court immediately before it went into effect. We did get it partially blocked. It's not entirely blocked. It's a little bit complicated because, I won't go into the details. It does affect practice in some areas of the state, but you can access abortion still beyond up to the legal limit in Ohio. So it didn't prevent that from happening. So the law is mostly blocked right now. recently, it was a few months ago, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, which hears cases out of Ohio, Kentucky, Michigan, and Tennessee, it decided that Kentucky's law, which was essentially identical to Ohio's, was completely unconstitutional and should be struck down in its entirety. So in that case, the clinics have gone back to the court in our Ohio case and said that the court should follow this precedent. And that case is now moving forward. The state is trying to say that, no, we need more facts. The Ohio case might be different. The Ohio situation might be different. And so that's where the fight is right now. And as the case is sort of slowly moving forward. Okay, there's yet another challenge. This is a slightly older law that requires clinics to have something called a written transfer agreement with a local hospital in Ohio, and it can't be a public hospital. Public hospital is defined very broadly. So it basically, again, without going into the weeds too much, because I am already almost out of my time, I'll say it is a law that is just intended to make it more difficult for clinics to operate. That law is currently in effect, and we are continuing to challenge it, and the litigation is moving forward in federal court. And finally, 2 days ago, as Jamie mentioned, and Sarah, we challenged the law that requires burial or cremation of tissue, embryonic and fetal tissue from an abortion, only from an abortion, not from a miscarriage. We challenged that in state court in Cincinnati. The basis, actually the initial basis, at least for our challenge, although this law is potentially unconstitutional in a lot of ways, we're just asking the court to block the law for now because the law is set to go into effect on April 6th, and it requires providers to use certain state mandated forms and to follow state regulations when they do this process. And the state has not put out those forms or regulations. So they are essentially like telling us to comply with the law by doing something that is impossible to do. It's like telling you, you must perform abortions only on days that don't end in Y or something like that. Or like, I don't know. So it's just a kind of a logical impossibility right now. And so we've asked, unfortunately, we tried to just get clarification on this from the state about what are we supposed to do since you haven't given us the forms to comply. And they've refused repeatedly to give us any clarification, despite multiple attempts. So we actually, believe it or not, had to go to court just to say, we cannot comply with this law because they will not give us what they said they would give us so that we can comply. That doesn't mean the challenge is over. It might depend on what happens after that, whether the law is, there are other constitutional challenges that get put into place. I'm going to stop talking, although if folks have questions in the Q&A, I can mention some things that are going on at the sort of national Supreme Court level if folks are interested, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jessie. Yeah, we did get questions and we'll definitely get to them. That was a really comprehensive update. You did great. And I just want to say, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that while we wait for the outcome of these court cases, laws are usually at least temporarily prevented from going into effect. Like the perfect example of that is the 6-week ban being signed into law in April, but then we got an injunction on it, temporary, just a few months later. And so, it's not in effect. And however, we just saw recently with the Ohio Policy Evaluation Network's study just a few weeks ago that said 1 in 10 women still believe abortion is illegal in Ohio. And that's not the case. And that's why I want to reiterate right now, as you said, abortion up to the legal limit is still legal in Ohio and in all 50 states, y'all. With exceptions after the legal limit as well. So now we're going to turn to Alana, who will talk to us about reproductive justice and the impact of regressive reproductive laws on Black, Brown, and other marginalized communities.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being here. And yes, thank you. We here in Ohio are always in this fight for reproductive justice and for our reproductive rights. I think one of the biggest things that we have to realize when we look at this from a reproductive justice lens, is that there's a divestment in Ohio across spectrums when it just comes to being a person with a uterus. So there's a divestment in communities of color, there's divestment in healthcare, there's divestment in education. And so oftentimes when people still are trying to learn and figure out where they fit in this battle, it's like, oh, these things then can't be that bad, or how does these things all fit in? And the truth is that they fit in because a lot of these bills, they put an undue and unnecessary burden on very indigent communities. And when we see that unmet burden, it isn't doing anything to actually increase opportunities for women or for anyone else in this state. I also think it's very important that we can't isolate issues around abortion from other issues and other attacks on bodily autonomy in this state. And so while on one hand, we see that the state is trying so hard to ban abortion, they're not doing absolutely nothing about the maternal death rates in this state. I think that Rep. Crawley and all the members of the Black Maternal Health Caucus, they've been working very diligently to get bills and legislation and things like that passed. And oftentimes some they're able to get passed and some of them fall on deaf ears, but instead they'll shift the focus to bodily autonomy when it comes to a woman deciding to terminate a pregnancy. We don't see the same type of investment in our schools. We don't see the same type of investment into the healthcare system. We still have many, many Ohioans that are living in like healthcare deserts where there's not a hospital within a 5-mile radius. These are not the things that our legislators are actually focusing on. They're focusing and they say it's because of life, but it's not because of life, because they haven't done anything about all of the unarmed Black people who have been killed in Ohio by law enforcement. There are still so many fights that we are still fighting when it comes to our people being gunned down and harmed in our communities. And so at what point are we still gonna, sorry, got sensitive. How long are we still gonna have these very antiquated and archaic types of fights that really, they don't matter? And we already know that the majority of Ohioans, they want pro-choice legislation. They want people to have bodily autonomy, but our legislators, they are very obsessed. They are obsessed with oppression, and they are obsessed with oppression of marginalized communities, and they're obsessed with control. And that is what we're seeing with these type of bills and their impacts on communities of color. And I don't even want to say poor people, and I know that language was used earlier. I think the better term is economically disadvantaged people. And also like using people first language of like, these are people who are economically disadvantaged. And oftentimes it's not because of any wrong or any decisions that they have made. It is in direct reflect of the values of our General Assembly and our legislator and people who are still fighting for a $15 minimum wage. We still are fighting these type of battles, which the fight for 15 started back in 2011. So actually at this point, it should probably be the fight for 25 due to inflation. And so we have to make sure that even when we are having these type of conversations, that we're not having them in silos, that we are being as intersectional as possible. And that's really what we try to do when we think of reproductive justice. We are really looking at what are all of the systemic and oppressive issues that impact a person's ability to have a liberated life, for their bodies to not always constantly be on the line. And we just don't see that here. Oftentimes we only focus on one particular issue. And yes, it is a really, really big issue. And we don't think about the millions of ways that it actually intersects into other issues. Jamie pointed out very clearly that, hey, they try to attack the budget. Ohio doesn't spend a lot of money on healthcare. So this isn't like a moral issue. They don't spend a lot of money on healthcare. They spend way more money on incarcerating people. They spend even less on education. They spend a lot of money oftentimes on like our defense systems, but there isn't as much money that is being spent on healthcare access. So on top of us restricting a human to do whatever they want with their bodies, We also are not actually investing in any of the systems that would even make raising a child in this type of environment a viable or sustainable or loving way. We're not doing any of that. We're not investing more into our education. We're not investing more into making sure that people have living wages. These are not things. And we're not doing anything to end the attacks in our criminal justice system, but we want to continue to criminalize abortion. And when we are criminalizing abortion, that is a direct attack on people of color, especially Black people, because we already know that Black people are over-incarcerated, overcharged. And so when we are deciding to add more criminal sanctions, the first people who are going to have to deal with that are oftentimes people who look like me. And so we have to see how this one issue has morphed into being able to flood out into so many different areas and arenas. And so even when we speak of abortion, we have to make sure that we're talking about it in all its encompassing. And actually, what are we saying when we are taking someone's ability to control their body away? Because that is what we're talking about. We are talking about, in its truest form, bodily autonomy. And when you have a state that has so many people that you treat as if they're a subjugated class that do not have viable access to liberation, and you tell them that the last thing that you're going to do is take away their right for them to make their own decisions according to their bodies, well, you have probably reached the lowest of low at that point. Because when you think of people who are economically disadvantaged, who are not making a living wage, who do not have access to quality healthcare, quality food options, when you are talking to people, especially Black women, who have a maternal death rate of 4 times higher, which I can't have my child because you just said if I have an abortion, that's a crime. But then when I do decide to have a child, I'm now 4 times more likely to die because of racism. What else are you trying to do then? Because I'm not liberated in this space. Because if I try to even attempt to have a kid, I don't know what's going to happen. And then if I actually use my body autonomy, now I might go to prison. Or now you're going to charge that doctor. But you still don't want to pass legislation to help with implicit bias. Ohio seems to be a place that really just, it continues to want to make people who are not part of the dominant majority in a way, just feel as if they're continuously in this subjugated place. And that is how a lot of us feel here. And that's why conversations like these are very important. We also, when we have these conversations, we have to realize how intersectional it is and how it plays a role in so many other decisions that women, people of color have to make on a daily basis. So yeah, I think I'll stop there because I think I'm almost out of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. I'm processing all of that because that was just incredible. Thank you so much for speaking your truth and the truth of so many here in Ohio. And I don't even know how to follow up with that because that's just, wow, thank you. And again, and like you can see all of the love in the chat going on for you right now. And so now we are going to move on to Gabby, who will talk to us about the reproductive rights movement found in a community that many would automatically not assume to be involved in the move towards reproductive freedom for all. Gabby, can you talk to us about the religious voices found in the reproductive freedom movement?
Yeah, and sorry, I was like trying to clear my throat for like 5 minutes, I swear, and of course it happened right as I came off mic. First, just thank you, everybody, and thank you to all my co-panelists and to the ACLU for housing this conversation. My name is Gabi Garcia Vera. I am the Domestic States Programs Manager at Catholics for Choice, and my pronouns are anything as long as it's said respectfully. I, you know, I always love the work that we do because when I tell people where I work, very similarly to, I think, when we ask people about when they love other people, oftentimes what people tend to tell us about is a time that they remember being hurt. And for me, the way that I show up in relationship to the work that we do at Catholics for Choice has not come easy, right? Like, it has been a deep and arduous struggle. And for the people with us today, what I want to say to you more than anything is, no matter what kind of faithful person you are, right? Whether you practice a religion, whether you are making it up as you go along, whether you are going to church every day or going to church once a year or not going to church anymore at all. In BC, in the time before COVID, I welcome you into the community of faithful people that is the majority, the vast majority of people that support reproductive health, rights, and justice. And I think it is important to distinguish for folks, right? Like, as we contextualize this conversation, when we talk about the work and when we talk about the reproductive rights movement, right? More broadly and more specifically, we talk about these three sort of different and intersecting movements, right? We talk about reproductive rights, which is the movement to really use laws to change the outcomes of our reproductive self-determination, how we show up in the world, how we can have or not have families. And then we talk about reproductive health, which is, your own ability to make a decision for yourself and for your family, and like in whatever way and with whoever guidance you determine is the right person. And I cannot stress enough, I think, far too often this conversation lives in this magical theoretical place. I think the dogma of the conversation about the reproductive rights movement will let you believe that somehow there is a straw poll happening about how people are showing up to get their health care. And what I'm here to tell you is that the only person whose opinions matter about the health care that you desire, think you need, or need is yours. And then ultimately, and then the other piece is, and when we think about this, this is really where I like to center our conversation, right? Which is reproductive justice. And reproductive justice is a term founded by 12 Black women in the early 1990s, 1994, who really looked at the landscape of the way that we were talking about reproductive health and rights and said, you know what, we don't see ourselves. We don't see a vision for the future and for the work that we're doing in a way that gives us dignity. And so from that deeper dive, right, they founded the reproductive justice movement, which essentially is founded on the principle that people should be able to lead healthy and free lives, free of reproductive oppression, to be able to have or not have kids, and to be able to parent those children if they decide to have them in safe environments. And as I was listening to Alana, I thought to myself, the thing that keeps me up at night sometimes when I think about having a family, and in particular having a family that has children, because I think there are a lot of people who have families and will never have children. And I want to be really clear that that is still a family. And the thing that keeps me up at night sometimes is this idea that I have to send children out into a world that will treat them differently, that will objectify the way they look, that will perceive them to be more adult, or treat them in a different way because of the color of their skin or because of the way they express their gender. And I think when I sit with that in the work, I really struggle with it. You know, Catholics for Choice, I'm blessed in a lot of ways. We are an organization that's been around for over 40 years now, representing the vast majority of Catholics across the country, which, you know, when I tell people where I work, they're like, but you're not really Catholic. And I'm like, no, I was like, Puerto Rican and queer as the day is long. And I swear, super Catholic too. It's real complicated. I'd be telling people, I'm like, I'm going to send you the Cliff Notes. It'll be quicker. You know, and Ohio in particular is home to more than almost 2 million Catholics, which make up over 15% of the population. You know, I think, and I'm here to tell y'all, you know, protecting abortion access and reproductive access and reproductive health and rights and what that means, that is a Catholic value. Okay, you would be hard pressed to find a person out in these streets who would tell you, you know what, I don't want to make decisions about my own health care. And we know that the vast majority of Catholics believe that people should have access to be able to make the decisions for themselves and about their bodies. I think far too often we see our opposition come sword and shield rolling through the Capitol or through your neighborhood. Oftentimes you will see them outside of our clinics, harassing patients, making people feel unsafe, right? And they use faith as a way to hide behind, right? To say, we have a moral authority. Well, you know, that's not actually true, right? Like no one gets to have the monopoly on the moral authority, or no one gets to have a monopoly on faith and what that is. I think there are a lot of people that will say that organized religion is very cut and dry. And to those people, I ask them, you know, if we should stone people for wearing two different types of fabric at the same time, or whether, you know, someone should be put to death for eating a particular type of food. You know, we can recognize those things as ridiculous, right, for what they are. And I think in the way that we show up to this conversation about faith, it is more important than anything to recognize that life is not black and white, right? People show up in very complicated, messy ways, but showing up isn't just something that we do for ourselves, right? When we show up as faithful people to fight for reproductive health rights and justice, we give other people permission to stand in their power and reclaim their faith for themselves. It is, you know, it is really difficult, I think, sometimes for folks to show up because lots of people have been harmed by religion. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it is the greatest thing in the world. What I will tell you, though, is that I believe that faith moves mountains. And for the people that have it, whether it fits into the nice, neat little box, you know, that your church or temple or place of worship says it does or not, I think it's yours. And we deserve space at the table to have those conversations, right? And when we do that, we lessen the weight of our opposition to have the moral authority in a public-facing way about who gets to center faith, who are faithful people. You know, and I will leave y'all with this last piece, and then I want to leave time so that we can also jump into questions. But when I think about my faith, right, like in all the complicated ways that we show up to this conversation, I think that, you know, the Jesus that I knew growing up was like flipping bank tables and hanging out with, you know, sex workers and people who lived and had no means, cared absolutely about public health, right? Washing people's feet isn't just simply an act of service. It is an act of healthcare. And it should be deemed as such. And I think it would be a great disservice to our faith to show up and to allow the people that use their faith as sword and shield against us to have the monopoly on something that we know is not only sacred, but is instrumental to the way that we live, learn, and love.
Thank you, Gabby. I think it's important to really highlight one of the most important takeaways is that the loudest voices are not the ones that reflect the reality of what's happening on the ground. And, what you just said really speaks to that. And this can certainly be applied to other communities and other issue areas as well, which all happen to intersect at the end of the day. So we are so thankful to have Gabby here from Catholics for Choice. And we also want to uplift our friends at Ohio RCRC and the National Council of Jewish Women. There are many orgs advancing faith and repro rights here in this state and all across the nation, and we seek to uplift all of their messages and actions. All right, so now we'd like to open the floor for questions. We did get a few throughout the webinar. We got quite a few. Hopefully we can get to a bunch of them. So let's take a look at a few. For those who'd still like to drop a question, the Q&A box is below. So we are going to start. I'm going to rephrase the first one in the Q&A box and really ask simply, why do unconstitutional laws when it comes to reproductive rights keep getting passed?
I don't know if Jamie wants to weigh in on that. I have my theories, but probably.
I mean, I track it back. Gerrymandering. My favorite answer to all legislative questions. I mean, beyond that, of course, and Jesse can hook in more of this. It's a dedicated strategy just to continuously chip away. As Sarah, you said about Jocelyn's comment, chipping away continuously on access to abortion. When I used to give presentations out in the world, I would, physically move my body. Like they asked the court, can we go this far? Okay, he said, okay, that's okay. So can we go this far? Well, that's okay. I go this far. Oop, that's not okay. So let's backtrack here. Can I go this far? And so it's just a dedicated, controlled strategy to just continuously chip away and add more burdens to access to abortion care.
Yeah, I mean, if I could, I agree. And if I could just add a couple of other thoughts, like, one thing too is that this is sort of a win-win situation for these legislators who want to say, look, I'm, pro-life, right? Like I will do everything in my power to stop abortions from happening, which really feeds their constituencies. But then the big bad federal judge goes and strikes it down, right? So they can say, oh, I keep trying, but the judge keeps striking it down. And so, it really doesn't have although they do have a real world impact, they have a lot less devastating real world impact and less visible real world impact than they would if the laws actually went into effect, because groups like the ACLU are fighting so hard to get them struck down. And I think also, they have this impact because, I'm sorry, I think it was Sarah that mentioned the study about, people hear that the heartbeat ban, quote unquote, heartbeat ban passes, and they think abortion's illegal in Ohio, or at least some percentage are, because who's got the time to stay on top of all this? And it's complicated if you're not like sleeping and breathing this. And so, they get that benefit without having to actually ban abortion. People think it's banned. And then one last thought is that they wanted to go up to the Supreme Court. They're actively courting the 6-3 hostile Supreme Court by passing clearly unconstitutional laws that they just want to appeal all the way up and get the Supreme Court to overturn Roe.
And I would also add, I think, we can say what we want about the people that organize and work against us, right, in service to God only knows. Because low-key, I'd be like, the devil hears everything, and I'm sure he wrote their game plan. But the opposition is militant and due diligent about a couple things, right? They care very little about the truth, right? Which makes everything, I think, super easy for them. But they are very on brand, right? Oftentimes you will hear them say 3 things and they will repeat those three things, whether they are true or whether they are false, and they will repeat them until other people start repeating them. I think the other thing is these strategies are not just simply an overnight manifestation, right? We see our opposition consistently show up and tweak their strategy and continuously, introduce the same bill over and over and over again, and year to year pass it off between bill patrons, right? Getting them some magic like street cred, right, from their counterparts. And when the strategy gets called out for what it is, right? When it gets called out for being racist or, like super offensive and like clearly, targeting women and targeting access to healthcare, and like really pushing reproductive servitude, what they do is they hand it off, right? Then they go from having 12 bill sponsors, who are all men, to now the bill introducer is a woman, and now it just has 12 men riding on her coattails. And so we need to really become okay, I think, in our movement with asking for everything. Our opposition asks for everything, right? They may compartmentalize it into smaller bills, but they are asking for everything that they want. And here's what's up: they're getting it. Right? And we are showing up to the table saying to ourselves, I wonder why we're not getting free, when really we're still wearing the shackles of our oppressors, trying to figure out like what we're doing out here in these streets. And people are like, oh, I don't know what's wrong. I was like, we barely asked for enough to cover the cost of like most of the care that people need. How are we going to have this conversation in earnest if we are unwilling to really think about what we need as a community?
Thank you. Very poignant answers. So the next one, Jesse, you kind of alluded to this, but somebody asked, is there a case or bill that we should be most concerned about? And I'm going to go ahead and also add in like, not just in Ohio, but other states as well. Like, why should we be watching other states and what they're up to?
Yeah, well, I can jump on that. And then again, others might have thoughts as well. But on the abortion front, I think right now there is a case that is out of Mississippi, actually, where Mississippi tried to ban abortion starting at 15 weeks of pregnancy. So early second trimester. The initial federal court struck it down. It went up on appeals to a very conservative appeals court, struck it down because there's just no question that's unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade. Mississippi continues to push it and now has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to hear the case. And it has been sitting there also for like a year now in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, where the court has not decided yet whether to hear the case. So Supreme Court can decide to decide it or not. They don't have to take any particular case. So they only pick and choose the cases they really want to hear. And they have these conferences where they decide what cases they're going to hear. And they keep pushing this one off to the next one, the next one, the next one. They've done this like over a dozen times. So if the Supreme Court takes that case, I think most people agree that that means the court's ready to reconsider completely Roe v. Wade. I will say the implications in Ohio and what to watch for in Ohio is, like I mentioned, that 6-week abortion ban that's hanging out in the courts in Ohio. The scary thing about the fact that that case has been sitting there for quite a while and nothing is happening and the judge just put it on hold again is that if we lose Roe, if the Supreme Court overturns the constitutional right to abortion, we probably, that case is really in jeopardy now. Like that case is still pending and that law could go into effect in Ohio pretty quickly. So that's another really scary thought about what to watch for right now. I don't know if if other folks have any other thoughts about them.
Okay. Yesterday was Celebrate Abortion Providers Day, and I was really happy to see abortion providers and their staff and everyone being celebrated. But there is one group of people that I hope one of you can quickly talk about, and that's clinic escorts. Can we just like throw a little thing out there for them to celebrate the hard work that they put in, and then also, let people know how they can actually become a clinic escort.
I can hop on that. Yeah, I mean, clinic escorts are heroes every day outside of clinics. Almost every single one of our clinics, actually, I know every single one of our clinics faces protesters outside every single day. And so escorts are there to make sure that patients know how to get into buildings. A lot of our clinics don't have set aside parking lots that can easily get a patient from point A to point B. And in some clinics, especially like Toledo, the protesters are hyper aggressive, shoving flyers into windows, trying to trick patients into parking in a lot across the street instead of the clinic lot so that they can have more time with them. So escorts really do so much work to make sure that access to clinics is as easy for patients as possible. So a huge shout out to clinic escorts. Probably the easiest way, because they're all kind of individually set up with clinics, is to email info@prochoiceohio.org with like where you are, and we can get you hooked up with the person in charge of escorts for whatever area that you are in. But yes, definitely escorts are a huge part of ensuring that abortion access is a reality in our state.
Also, just to piggyback, because our abortion escorts are some of the best. Oftentimes, a lot of them, they are oftentimes agitated and attacked, even when they are not actively always doing that work. So they already are always putting their lives on the line for so many other people. And oftentimes it is religious right-wing folks who are leaving their places of worship to come and antagonize and to harm people who are just trying to seek out an abortion. And it is the abortion escorts who really make sure those patients are able to get into those buildings safely. And so also sometimes like we have to always make sure that we do go above and beyond for them because there are so many times when the other side actually does come and try to attack them. And then oftentimes our abortion patient escort, they also protest and they also are always fighting back and standing up for ourselves, even when we don't know. And so just really shout out to them and making sure that we are always also protecting them because they also are the ones who are on the front lines, who show up at demonstrations and who are very out loud and bold about all the attacks that are happening.
Great, thank you. So one question is, any recommendations to best advocate to our legislators about these issues?
Y'all, organize. We need to organize for people that look like us, that sound like us, that share in the belief that like people have dignity. Because sometimes I'd be listening to legislators talk low key on the floor and I'd be like, cool. I was like, you clearly either don't know other people or you don't know yourself. One of those things is clear. And there are so many amazing organizations in Ohio. Like there are so many opportunities to get involved. And from that perspective, I think every conversation that we have with potential voters about getting involved in the political process chips away at what feels like sometimes an avalanche of what we have to overcome to win seats sometimes. But what I will say is that the best people equipped to do that work are y'all, right? People that look like you and sound like you. And when you reach out to those communities, the ones that you both belong to and the ones that you live in, people recognize that, they see it, they feel it. And we are able to organize the people around us to get more involved in a political system to subvert, right? Basically the voter suppression that has happened in Ohio for decades, right? And if we're being honest, right, probably since the founding of Ohio. So, but y'all can get involved. Like almost every organization in the FOCO Coalition does some form of GOTV work, does very individual work, either organizing like faithful partners or doing more work on the clinic side, or organizing in Black and Indigenous and people of color communities in particular, right? Like find the place that feels like your political home and then throw down with that with the righteous fury, right? That we show up to these conversations because they deserve it.
Yep. Unfortunately, we are out of time to take more questions, but I did want to ask our panelists if you have any closing thoughts or like one sentence you would like the audience to go away with, and if so, what is it?
I mean, I guess just, I couldn't say it more eloquently than my co-panelists, but I think, just to build off of that, like it's in our hands, right? It's up to us, and, we have to seize the power, and we have to do it.
Yes, we have to seize the power, and we have to make sure that we are always uplifting and in solidarity and protecting those who are always willing to put themselves on the line for this. Because the truth and the reality is everyone's not going to be an organizer, and everyone's not going to be processing, everyone's not going to do policy. And that's okay, right? We all have a lane. And I never want people to walk away from panels like this thinking that they're powerless or they don't have a lane to be involved in, because you do. And sometimes that is just as simple as making sure your fellow clinic escort or organizer has had food the other day. Sometimes it is donating. It is so many ways that you can show up in this fight, whether you are protecting the people who are doing the work, whether you are writing a letter. So never walk away feeling powerless, and just know that you all have a voice, you are powerful, and make sure that you always see yourself in this fight with us.
I think I would just say, conversations are hard, right? Like changing hearts and minds, like looking around the table and understanding that you have a political difference or that you have a moral disagreement with someone is a very difficult and sometimes can be experienced as a very violent interaction between yourself and someone else. But here's what I will say, right? The moments in which we choose to have conversations with the people that we love and we care about, to talk about the issues that are important to us, are the moments in our lives where courage is birthed. It is the place where we allow ourselves the vulnerability and the space to show up with people that we love and have courageous, bold conversations. And that is how we win. We don't do it by circumventing the conversation because we're like, oh, we're going to ruin Thanksgiving, right? We show up and we have conversations with the people we love because we love them. And because if they are going to love us, then they need to be able to hold all of us, not just parts of us.
Yeah, I'll echo Elena and Gabby and say that talking to legislators, I'm a policy person, talking to legislators is important, but those critical conversations are those everyday conversations that you are having with people in your home and in your community, and that culture change and structural change starts with those tiny little small conversations. So we always think about thinking big. Really, when it comes to this, it's thinking small. It's those daily interactions you have that push back on abortion stigma, that fight to support the people doing this work on the front lines, that really do create the change that we need to see in our state.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you to my wonderful, wonderful, wonderful panelists. Y'all have left me in awe. There's a lot of love for y'all in the chat as well. For those who are looking to become involved in the fight for reproductive rights and access in Ohio, be sure to visit abortionislegalinohio.com and follow all of the wonderful organizations who are part of the Freedom of Choice Ohio Coalition. We've got lots of plans in the works, including an incredible 2-day event taking place on April 15th and 17th, titled The People's Agenda for Justice. Here, you will be able to join organizations and focus and work toward what we know Ohio can and should be for its people. We will be coming together as a movement for justice, for our bodies, for our families, and for ourselves, and to speak to what we and all Ohioans deserve. Because at the end of the day, Ohioans deserve abortion access, they deserve education, we deserve healthcare, we deserve justice, we deserve more. Thank you.